This video series includes 3 lessons covering academic integrity and plagiarism. In Lesson 2 of the Academic Integrity and Plagiarism module, we will take a closer look at plagiarism. This second video will review the definition of plagiarism, distinguish between cheating and plagiarism, and identify the various types of plagiarism. In review from Lesson 1, plagiarism is using someone else's words or ideas and passing them off as your own. Plagiarism is a subgroup of violations of academic dishonesty. More specifically, plagiarism is considered an act of fraud. Cornell University defines plagiarism as misrepresenting somebody else's intellectual work, ideas, information, writing, and thinking as your own. In other words, it is a misuse of source material. It is important to know that plagiarism is always cheating, but cheating is not always plagiarism. Here are 2 examples of cheating that are not plagiarism. The first example of cheating is using a calculator on an assignment where one isn't allowed. You're not using someone else's ideas or words in this act of cheating. The second example of cheating is making something up to support your argument. As with the first example, you are not using someone else's words or ideas. Sometimes it isn't always clear if something is plagiarism. Which of the following examples do you think are plagiarism? Having someone else write a paper for you, or buying a paper online? Working with a classmate on an assignment that's not a group or team project? Copying parts of a friend's work, including things like coding and formulas? Using quotes without giving credit? Paraphrasing someone else's work without giving credit. All of these examples are plagiarism, and here's why. For this first example, most students recognize that this is plagiarism. As stated in the first video lesson, professors and instructors expect your work and not someone else's. This second example isn't as clear. It is plagiarism if each of you write or create different parts of the assignment and then combine your work to hand it in individually. Is plagiarism because you aren't citing the other person's work, and it's an extra layer of cheating because the assignment isn't a group project. Similar to the second example, this third example is plagiarism because you aren't citing or giving credit to the other person's work. Additionally, formulas and computer code are considered someone else's ideas and work. Copying them is plagiarism. This fourth example is plagiarism because the quote isn't cited. When using someone else's words, it is important to give that person credit. Most writing styles have a structure in place on how to give credit. This is also known as in-text citing. Similar to using quotes without credit, this last example of paraphrasing without credit is plagiarism. Even though the paraphrasing is in your words, the ideas you are summarizing are not yours. So it's important to give credit. Have you ever complained or commented about writing a paper online, like on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or other platform, then started seeing ads about plagiarism-free essays? This is pretty common and the number of writing services abound. Here are just a few of what is available. They all have disclaimers like this one. These are to protect the company and not you. The use of these services is a violation of ISU's Student Code of Conduct. Now that we've had an overview of plagiarism in general, let's take a look at the different types of plagiarism. There are various types of plagiarism and can typically be categorized into 3 main areas: intentional plagiarism, accidental plagiarism, and self-plagiarism. Intentional plagiarism is sometimes referred to as cut and paste plagiarism. This is when the individual knowingly takes someone else's work and claims it as their own. Here are some examples of intentional plagiarism: quoting or paraphrasing without attribution, copying and pasting with no attempt to cite or change the text, buying a paper, copying or taking another person's entire paper or project and claiming it as your own, inserting a citation for a source you didn't use or that doesn't exist, handing in a paper or project you wrote or created for a different class. This form of plagiarism is viewed by student conduct and responsibilities and professors as the most egregious form of plagiarism. Accidental plagiarism is plagiarism that happens by accident or is not intentional. The two main ways this type of plagiarism happens is not knowing what counts as plagiarism and sloppy mistakes. Here are some examples of unintentional plagiarism: carelessness or sloppy editing or note-taking, paraphrasing without citing a source, forgetting to cite one or more sources, swapping out a few words from a copied paragraph even if you cite the source. This is called patch writing, citing a source incorrectly. This form of plagiarism is the most common form of plagiarism here at Illinois State. Self-plagiarism is not as clear. It is using work you've previously created without giving yourself credit or acknowledging that previous work. Here are some examples of self-plagiarism: resubmitting work from one class to the next, reusing your past work in a new paper or project and not citing yourself, using portions of another paper or project you wrote or created and not citing yourself. While not as common, it has long-term implications on one's career, particularly if you're working on your thesis, dissertation, or articles for publication. If you aren't sure if you can use previous work, ask your professor or committee chair. Now that we've identified types of plagiarism, here are other important terms you need to know: common knowledge, paraphrase, direct quote, in-text citation. Let's take a closer look at each term. Common knowledge is information known by most people. Examples would be the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. What is considered common knowledge also depends on your audience. This type of information does not need to be cited. However, when in doubt, ask your professor or cite it. Paraphrasing is restating someone else's ideas in your own words. This does need to be cited because the ideas and thoughts are not yours, even if you are using your own words. It takes practice to do paraphrasing well. This technique is about making ideas from other sources fit well into your paper. Make sure you don't just change a few words. This is called patch writing, which is plagiarism. A direct quote is taking someone else's direct words and placing them in quotation marks. Direct quotes do need to be cited. Generally, direct quotes should be used sparingly. The writing style you are using will provide guidelines on how often you should use them. An in-text citation is the attribution you give within the text of your paper or presentation. Where the in-text citation is placed and the formatting depends on the writing style you are using, such as APA, MLA, or Chicago. The next lesson covers strategies for avoiding academic dishonesty and plagiarism.